I made my own wedding cakes, and here are all 5 flavors that I made. First, I had to prep my cake pans by lining with parchment paper and oil. The first flavor I made was vanilla, and I weighed out the batter to ensure that all the layers would be the same thickness. For my second cake flavor, I made reverse Oreo. I just crushed up some Oreos and then mixed this into the cake batter. When the cake layers were done, I flipped them out and then saran wrapped all of them and put them in the fridge to cool. The third cake flavor I made was red velvet, and I somehow splattered the batter onto the walls. The fourth flavor I made was chocolate, and chocolate is my favorite cake. And last but not least, for my fifth cake flavor, I made carrot cake. This is a classic in my family. After 5 hours of baking 15 cake layers, I was done for the day. The next day was all about making my buttercreams and frostings. I made about 10 batches of Italian Swiss meringue buttercream. This definitely took a lot of butter and a lot of time, especially since I only had 2 mixing bowls and I can only whip up so much butter in one bowl. I added in a little bit of purple food coloring into my yellow buttercream because based on color theory and the color wheel, I used the complementary color of yellow, which is purple, to cancel out the yellow hues, thus making it more white.
For the cream cheese frosting, I mixed together cream cheese, powdered sugar, and vanilla extract. And after almost 2.5 hours, the frosting and buttercreams were done. This is where I ran into a little problem because my carrot cake layers were so thin compared to my other cake layers, and I just hated how they were not the same height. But I still went with it and started building the cake layers. I did cut out a little piece of the cake just to try it, and it was just not good. The texture was off and it tasted weird, so I ended up throwing the whole thing out. And I was so upset. But I didn't have time to mope about it because I still had 4 other cakes to build and assemble. This was a very tedious process because I had different flavors of buttercreams, different fillings that I made. I had a salted caramel filling that I made myself, like my Oreo buttercream. I had to blitz Oreos into crumbs and then mix that in with my buttercream. And I had a vanilla raspberry cake that I had to fill with raspberry jam. And now that 4 of the 5 cakes are now assembled and crumb coated, it's time to go back to that stupid carrot cake that caused me so many problems. I tried using my blender so that I didn't have to hand grate carrots, but then for some reason I just didn't have the proper attachment and it was making such chunky pieces of carrots. No one wants to eat chunky pieces of carrots in carrot cake. By then it was already 10 p.m. and I was so over and done with all of this, but I wasn't done yet because I still had to frost all of my cakes. And this also of course took me so long because I am such a perfectionist. I made sure to smooth out every crevice and every part of the buttercream because I didn't want to see any air pockets or bubbles or uneven layers of buttercream. And you probably think by now I'm done. Nope, I still had to go back to assemble that carrot cake, crumb coat it, and frost it. And finally, after being in the kitchen today for 7 hours, all the cakes were frosted, Bills did all of the dishes, and we are finally ready to go to bed. Here is the next day and the last day of making these cakes. Unfortunately, I did not get around to decorating the cakes until 11 p.m. because it was Christmas Day. For the piping, I took inspiration from the vintage style cakes, and then for the other cakes, I just couldn't be bothered anymore, so I did some simple piping and threw on some sprinkles. And after 14 hours of blood, sweat, and tears, here are all 5 of my wedding cakes at our venue.